The Dominion's maximum security facility on Kepler 442b had earned its reputation through 7 centuries of perfect containment. Not a single prisoner had ever escaped the Crimson Depths, a name that spoke to both the red-hued rock surrounding the underground complex and the blood spilled by those foolish enough to attempt freedom. Warden Zektar adjusted his forearms nervously as he reviewed the security footage for the 100th time that cycle. The human designated as prisoner 47291 sat in his cell, whistling some primitive earth melody while sketching on the wall with a makeshift charcoal stick. The sight made Zektar's exoskeleton itch with unease. "Sir," his aide, Velman, approached with cautious steps. "The council is demanding answers. How did the human breach 17 security checkpoints neutralize the quantum locks and walk through a solid titanium wall?" Zektar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Show me the footage again." The holographic display materialized, showing the events from 3 standard hours ago. Marcus Chen, the human terrorist who had single-handedly destroyed a Dominion supply depot, had simply stood up in his cell, stretched, and began walking toward the wall. The quantum containment field, capable of holding a small star's energy, flickered like a dying light bulb. The molecular scanners that could detect a gnat's heartbeat from 50 meters away registered nothing. The titanium carbide composite, wall 3 meters thick and reinforced with graviton mesh, had parted like morning mist. Chen had walked through it all with his hands in his pockets, humming that insufferable tune. "Perhaps," Velmin suggested tentatively, "the human possesses some unknown technology." "We scanned him with everything we had," Zektar snapped. "Quantum resonance, molecular analysis, psionic detection, temporal displacement sensors. Nothing. He's exactly what he appears to be, a primitive carbon-based biped with no cybernetic enhancements, no psionic abilities, and technology that wouldn't impress a Dominion child." On the monitor, Chen paused at the main gate, the final barrier between the facility and the harsh surface of Kepler 442b. The gate required simultaneous authorization from 3 separate command centers, each locked behind biometric scanners, calibrated to Dominion physiology. Chen had somehow bypassed them all. But that wasn't the part that haunted Zektar's dreams. The part that made his chitin crawl was how Chen had turned toward the primary security camera, looked directly into it and smiled. Not a grin of triumph or a sneer of contempt, just a warm, friendly smile, as if he were greeting an old friend. Then he had waved, actually waved, before disappearing into the crimson wasteland outside. "Sir," Bellman's voice was barely above, a whisper, "what if the legends are true?" Zektar's secondary arms twitched. The legends. Every species in the galaxy had them, stories of humans that defied explanation. Humans who survived impossible odds, who found solutions where none existed, who somehow bent reality to their will through nothing more than stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The Zephyrians called it plot armor, a mystical force that protected humans during their most desperate moments. The Crystalline Confederation believed humans possessed a narrative imperative that altered probability in their favor. The philosophical Etherians theorized that humans existed in a constant state of quantum uncertainty, allowing them to collapse possibility waves through sheer expectation. Zektar had dismissed such nonsense as primitive superstition, the kind of stories that lesser species told themselves to explain their repeated defeats at human hands. But now, "Run a comprehensive analysis," he ordered. "I want to know everything about this human's background." The data streams flowed across the display. Marcus Chen, age 34, born on Earth Colony Sigma-7. Former engineer, specializing in what humans called jury rigging, the art of making functional solutions from insufficient resources. No formal military training, yet he had outfought seasoned Dominion shock troopers. No advanced education in physics, yet he seemed to understand concepts that eluded Dominion scientists. But buried in the files, Zektar found something that made his blood run cold. Chen's psychological profile contained a single notation that human authorities had flagged but apparently never understood. Subject demonstrates persistent optimism bias, and refuses to acknowledge mathematical impossibility of success in high-risk scenarios. He didn't know he couldn't escape, Zektar whispered. Sir? Look at his behavior patterns. This human never once accepted that escape was impossible, while every other prisoner in our history eventually acknowledged the futility of their situation. This one just kept believing it was possible. Fellman's optical sensors widened. You mean? I mean that for 700 years our perfect security record created its own reality. Every prisoner who entered these walls knew they could never leave. They shaped their own probability matrix around that certainty. But this human, Zektar gestured at the frozen image of Chen's smile. This human never accepted our reality. The implication struck both officers simultaneously. Humans didn't just defy odds, they redefined them. Their stubborn refusal to accept impossibility somehow made the impossible possible. It wasn't technology or evolution or divine intervention. It was pure, irrational, magnificent human audacity. 3 days later, intelligence reports confirmed that Marcus Chen had not only survived the wasteland of Kepler 442b, but had somehow jury-rigged a distress beacon from scavenged materials and been rescued by a passing human merchant vessel. When interviewed by galactic news agencies, he had simply shrugged and said, "Prison walls are just suggestions. I've never been good at following suggestions." Warden Zektar submitted his resignation that same day. In his final report, he wrote, "Recommend immediate cessation of human incarceration. Our facilities are designed to contain prisoners who understand they cannot escape. Humans apparently do not suffer from this limitation." The Dominion Council filed the report under unsubstantiated claims and promptly forgot about it. They would remember Marcus Chen's smile, however, when the next human prisoner simply walked through their impenetrable defenses, whistling an earth tune and carrying a coffee mug that he had somehow crafted from prison rations. After all, if one human could do the impossible, what was to stop the rest of them?